I thought this was going to be a fun one about people stealing sand, but it's like, no, mafia murders. Welcome everybody to Business Blaze, where we learn businessy things together. I was reading online about sand, and it sounds like the most boring thing in the world, but I promise it's interesting. I had writer Steve put together some notes on the sand mafia. We're gonna go through it, we're gonna learn about it together. It's gonna be fun. Let's get into it. The title of this video sounds like a Star Wars movie, but it's actually, you know, just as a side note there, I've never seen Star Wars. I mean, I saw one Star Wars like back in the 1990s. They were like rebroadcasting the old Star Wars movies in the theater. It was the one where they ride like flying motorbikes through the forest. That's all I remember from it. It was kind of dull. The title of this video does sound like a Star Wars movie. I guess it does. Let me know in the comments. But it's actually rather serious. Most people's experience of sand is scraping it off their feet when they come home from the beach. But there is a secret battle for sand taking place around the world, which is increasingly spilling out into the open, like sand. Clever, Steve. Sand may be lying around not doing very much, but the reality is it's vitally important to our development as modern human beings. Of course! I know where we're going. Take concrete, for example, which is mixed with sand. No concrete, no buildings, and obviously, okay, I see the connection. Plus, you wouldn't be able to see out of those buildings without glass windows, and of course, I know this, you know this. Sand goes into glass. They heat up sand super hot, then it goes invisible, and then they make glass. At least that's how I'm assuming it works. Indeed, the screen you're watching this on might have glass on it, like Gorilla Glass or whatever. So yes, sand does have a surprisingly big influence on 21st century life. Indeed. Unfortunately, our supplies of this precious commodity are running out. So how is that even possible with vast stretches of sand out there, like deserts and endless beaches? I mean, whenever you see endless beaches, it's like, alright, but at least I can like see the amount of sand that is available. The Sahara Desert, you can see that from space. It's big. The answer is simple. Cool. It's human greed. Of course it is. Humans. Just as we've destroyed the rainforests for wood and made millions of monkeys cry. I actually looked this up. Millions of monkeys cry over palm oil. Fun fact here, little bonus fact as we go through this episode. Monkeys do cry, but it's only to clean their eyes. In fact, we are the only animal that cries because of sadness. Kind of sad in itself. So basically, we are buying up sand like there's no tomorrow. We need it for construction. Not everyone is doing it legally though. I guess this is going to be our mafia connection. A thriving black market has emerged in recent years. Amazingly, this led to the theft of an entire beach in Jamaica in 2008. 10 feet deep trenches were dug overnight at Coral Springs, Trelawney, a complex operation involving 500 truckloads. Clean-looking white sand, the sort found in Jamaica, is high. So this is Jamaica, I guess, Trelawney. I didn't know that. Is highly sought after. This white sand is highly sought after. Of course it is. It's what we see in, like, you know, desktop backgrounds. You always want that white sand, none of that yellow. Okay, so this brings us to an important point about sand theft, and that's only certain types of sand are being targeted. Okay, so now we get into the actual important bits. Desert sand is plentiful. Yes, there is the Sahara, but it's totally unsuitable for business purposes. You're probably wondering, why can't you put this sand in a skyscraper? Well, simply put, it's because it's too silky for concrete. Have I been to the desert? I feel like I must have been to the desert. And you do touch it, and it's very soft. Okay, that makes sense. The grains are too round after being eroded by the desert winds. The best kind of sand is close to water. Ocean floors and riverbeds are plundered for the high quality stuff, which is grittier, and I guess that makes it like a better binding agent for concrete. I'm not exactly sure how concrete production works. If someone wants to enlighten me in the comments, that would be awesome. Or I suppose I could just Google it. The people stealing the sand are some rather nasty individuals. In fact, there's a criminal organization in India known as the Sand Mafia. Oh my. While this name might sound silly, it does. Their activities have serious consequences. Business Insider described them in 2018 saying, and this is a quote from Business Insider, this interconnected group of businessmen, drivers, and criminals use their influence. And if that fails, violence and murder. Holy shit. That's not a quote from Business. That's a quote, but the swearing was all me. And murder to keep the sand flowing. Illegal sand generates $2.3 billion a year, employing 75,000 of India's impoverished to dive for sand in rivers. Divers work 12-hour days, diving up to 200 times and making only $15 a boatload. Many suffer from bleeding ears and headaches. Deaths and drownings go unreported. I watched a little short documentary on YouTube about this. If I can find it again when I'm uploading this video, I will link it to below. This is as crazy as it sounds. You have these Indian dudes, these poor Indian dudes, who go out on these boats and they swim to the bottom with buckets and they scoop sand into it and then they bring those buckets up to the top. How are there not machines doing this? And yeah, these guys get super messed up from it. It was really sad. I'm laughing, but it was a really sad documentary, and these guys, they're not doing well, and they make basically no money. Yeah, $15 a boatload. These are not small boats that were in this documentary. These were proper size, I mean, not like shipping containers, but you know, boats for many people. With humanity getting through billions of sand per year, the rewards for criminals are huge. Yeah, it's like $2.3 billion. Despite attempts by world governments to regulate the situation, it continues. Investigating sand theft is a dangerous business, and many people put their lives on the line tracking down those missing grains. So yeah, you don't mess with the mafia, even the sand mafia, apparently. That's crazy. It doesn't actually say, Steve doesn't say if people have been killed. Wait, no, it kind of does, right? People put their lives on the line. Oh yeah, and there was the whole thing about people getting murdered. I thought this was going to be a fun one about people stealing sand, but it's like, no, mafia murders. So much sand is being scooped up by gangsters, but where is it going? That's where things get tricky. When the beach in Jamaica was spirited away, experts were sent in to conduct forensic tests on potential locations that it could have ended up. So the sand was taken from a multi-million-dollar resort development. Now, where did they offload the sand? Well, actually, they sent it to 2 other resorts. Their forensics teams, they investigated, and they found at another resort suspiciously colored patches of sand on their grounds. Basically, what they'd done is they'd taken the really nice sand from that beach, and then they'd sprinkled it on top of their resorts, like less nice sand, so I guess it looks good in people's like Instagrams. Wow. The resorts in question, they said that they bought the sand in good faith. I guess they didn't ask too many. Like, where'd you get the sand? Legally. Things become even more complicated when you factor in institutional corruption. It's alleged police colluded with criminals to take the sand and distribute it. It is Jamaica. It's probably not the least corrupt. It's probably not like Iceland or Finland or one of these super uncorrupt countries, is it? Despite going through a high-profile police investigation launched by then Prime Minister Bruce Golding, no one was found guilty of the crime. The culprit slipped through everyone's fingers like sand. Well done, Steve. Away from this gritty underworld, sand mining in general is damaging the environment. By removing sand from the ocean floor, for instance, you take away microorganisms and disrupt the food chain. And because the bottom of the ocean is actually a rock covered by a layer of sand, the missing grains are replaced by sand from the shore, and that goes on. As that goes on, the shoreline starts dwindling. That makes sense. I was thinking, you know, if you really need this like ocean sand, why not just go out to the middle of the ocean and take it from the floor? Now we know. Surely if you take some stuff out of like that Marianas Trench or whatever, it's gonna be fine. But I guess like over a really long time, it's not gonna go well. Nature finds a way to sustain itself, but the removal of sand by human hands has caused entire islands to disappear. Okay, this isn't a joke, is it? Their land is shoveled up and it's used as building materials around the world. Yeah, we knew that. Not all of this goes into a cement mixer. It's also bought in order to expand territory. I've heard about this. Singapore is the planet's biggest importer of sand, and people have noticed its coastline is getting bigger. They're literally making their country larger. This is super fascinating. I remember as a kid, not related to Singapore, but in the UK, after they dug the Channel Tunnel, which is the connection between the UK and France, like underground, they used the rock or whatever that they drilled through to expand the coast of the UK, and I went there, and it's like this little nature park. I went there with my gran and walked around. It was really nice. I guess that sand wasn't stolen. But Singapore is this, you know, Singapore's like a city. Is Singapore a city-state? I think it is. It's really small and they don't have much land, so they expand it by dumping more sand in the sea. Super interesting. Now you might be thinking this is very sad. It is. You might be thinking, I live away from the coast. I am. So how does it affect me? I wonder. Well, the crisis is closer to home than you think. It may be your actual home. The stuff that gets between your toes is increasing in price, and that's bad news for property owners. Vince Beiser, author of a 2018 book, The World is a Grain, this is a quote, "I believe this is one of the reasons that housing prices have gone up so much in pretty much all of America's big cities, because the price of sand has quintupled in the last 30 to 40 years. And one of the critical inputs when you're building a house, of course, is sand for the concrete." And that's true. Like, I've mixed concrete before. I think I did it with my dad when I was a kid. Don't remember what we were building. But mixing concrete, I think the majority is like sand and water. And then the cement powder itself is actually a smaller part of it. So you can see why this works. Major cities could not exist without concrete and glass, we know that for sure. So if the sand situation isn't sorted out quick, we might be living very different lives. Alternative sand is in development using ingredients such as sawdust or ground glass. But we're going to need to take major action to prevent a tidal wave of money washing away our natural supplies forever. Sawdust, I heard, was an amazing binder. I did a video, I think it was on my Today I Found Out channel, about pykrete, which is basically ice and sawdust mixed together, which makes this insanely strong concrete-like substance. They tried to build like an entire battleship out of it. It's a crazy story. If I can find my video about that, which I should be able to do, but I've done like 1,000 of them, I will link to it below. It's a good watch. And that's it. Bonus fact time. It's one of the sandiest places on Earth, yet Dubai couldn't use its own sand for its development. Well, it's a desert thing, we learned this, right? After using up their marine sand, constructing an epic playground for the wealthy, they had to turn to Australia to finish the job, topping up their sandbank balance. Mind you, they could afford it. They could. Dubai's pretty rich. It's crazy. This is one of those things that you think has to be a myth, right? That Dubai and the desert import sand, but there you go. It does it, and now you know why. Now for another bonus fact. When a beach goes missing in Jamaica, some wealthy and powerful people get involved. Not just police or politicians, but royalty. Because Jamaica is part of the British Commonwealth, the crown was drawn into the saga. Maybe these criminals didn't realize, but they're messing with the Queen of England. Sort of, but only like in name. It's like, if I don't know for a fact, but I assume here, if it's Commonwealth, when you go to court, you face, it's always criminal versus and Regina, which stands for the Queen. So I guess in Jamaica maybe they have the same thing. So, but it's like when, John steals something from someone's house and goes to court, and it's like John and Regina. He's not really messing with the Queen per se, but I get it. It's pretty clever. All right. That's sand. I think that last page is just sources, which I will link to below. And that is the Sand Mafia. I hope you found it interesting. This is a new channel. If you've got suggestions for me, also leave those in the comments below. If they're good suggestions, if you vote them to the top, I'll have something written, and then we will learn it together, because that's what we do on this channel. And I'll see you next time.